Hi, this is Glenn Brink. I'm accepting a challenge from one of my business partners here on the internet. The challenge to do a video every day for the rest of my life. And he promises a transformation within 90 days. I think I can agree with that. I've been in business for 30 years. My interest has always been in helping other people to improve their lives. Perhaps the best way to improve is to change every day. Consistency, I think, has been one of my secrets to success. And I've been highly successful in the field of network marketing, off and on. I've reached the heights of success more than once. I'm one of the rare breed of people who've made a living, made a killing, lost it all, as has happened a lot in our industry, and then done it over again. It's a rare breed who is able to repeat the success that they may have once experienced. Part of the secret of getting yourself better every day so that you're prepared for success is to improve. Learn to improve. And one of the easiest ways to lock that in, to make it a part of your life, a permanent improvement instead of a transitory event in your life. Instead of knowing something, you need to live it. And the best way to live it is to teach it. If you will tell somebody what you've learned, at a minimum, that will help you live it. And you'll have people to remind you about that. Oh, I thought you did so-and-so. Oh, yeah, I did. Now I remember. Sure, I'm going to do that again. And so your life can grow. It can improve on a daily basis. It can improve with everything that you learn. So use all the ways that you know to learn: videos, audio tapes, reading a book. I think one of our generation's great teachings was to read books. Our parents were locked into college. Go to college. They went through the wars and the depressions and so forth, and they taught us you got to go to college, you got to make something out of yourself. And many of us did that. And we haven't necessarily done for our children what they did for us. But the Internet's now replacing that. The Internet is now available to everyone, or it will be. That's one of the paths of the Improve the Society people, is to get a computer for everybody. That could be one of your goals in life: having a better computer for yourself, having more free time for yourself, having a life for yourself. So I want to tell you a story about how I had learned something a few years back. I've tried to tell the story, I've tried to blog about it, and not really been able to get it across before. I think a video will help me do it. I have a story about how to catch a skunk. And it's kind of a roundabout method of catching a skunk, because it may not be something that you want to do hands-on. Anyway, it all started out with my dog Rosie, and when we'd go outside, she would start sniffing at all the cracks in our deck. We've got a nice big deck on the back of the house, and she would go sniffing in the cracks. Instead of going out on the grass and doing her business as efficiently as she used to do, she was smelling the cracks all the time. Seemed like several months in a row. And finally spring was coming, and she's doing the same thing, only now there weren't snowbanks around the deck, so she would smell the cracks on the deck, and then when she'd go down onto the grass, she'd start smelling the lattice work all the way around the deck. And we got 3 sides bedding up against the house, great big deck, nice place for animals to live. We usually had rabbits seeming to live down there, and maybe we had some birds one time. But I didn't know why Rosie was so attracted to the deck until Mr. Fox started making his presence known. Not at the deck, but in the street. He'd come home at night, and he'd start wailing because Rosie wouldn't let him back in the yard. If Rosie was out there, she would go crazy when the fox was coming around, and barking, and he started doing the same thing, and he would start screaming. Fox has more of a scream than a bark, and they can yelp like a bark as well, and he was trying to get his way back home, as we found out later, under the deck, where his whole family was located, as Mom was birthing some kits that spring, and of course, Rosie was going crazy about it. As time went along, I finally made the judgment that there was a fox, probably a whole family of foxes under the deck. Not that we'd seen anything, except we'd heard Mr. Fox trying to come home at various times of the day, and if Rosie was in the yard, he had an obstacle. Anyway, Rosie would chase him away. So I finally figured out that there was probably a family of foxes down there, and there was only one way for the big foxes to get in and out, underneath the stairwell. Well, there was bigger holes for them to get through the deck lattice work. And so I had to find out how to get rid of a family of foxes, how to get rid of foxes. You can't scare them off, they'll just go back in the corner and hide. You can't get in there yourself, it's too small. If you wouldn't want to get a hold of one anyway. Rosie would like to. She thinks she'd like to. But, so I had to do the research of what to do about a fox. How do you start research? Start asking the people that you know. Well, I knew one person. This person happened to have heard a program on the radio about how to get rid of foxes, because we have a lot of rabbits in our neighborhood. We live in a nice suburb outside of Denver, and rabbits all over the place. Perfect place for rabbits, all kinds of grass, flower beds, and occasional vegetable garden and so forth. And so the rabbits thrive with all kinds of places to hide. And in our neighborhood, when I moved in about 6 years ago, we found that there was a family of foxes in the neighborhood. They lived maybe in a bush or under a house in the same place the whole time. And probably when there got to be two families, one of them moved into my place, or as I discovered later, they're probably don't stay in one place all the time. They probably move around. They live in one place for a while, a few years, and then move, and kind of looking for better territory and keeping their safety a little bit. So this family of foxes had moved in under my house, and we found from the radio, from my friend, how to get rid of a family of foxes was you could get some ammonia and you could spray it on their hole, which wasn't ideal with a big environment like my deck, but I could get at the main hole, especially if Father Fox was laying there looking out, and I could spray him with one of those great big spray bottles for cleanser. And so I got that out, and another way was to keep them awake. And the way you keep them awake is to put a radio on them. And so we turn the radio on, put it on either talk radio or metal music. And you can get either one of those all night long. So I would put my radio in there, and I'm sure the neighborhood didn't particularly like it. But we played the radio, and I hear that it takes 7 to 10 days to get them to change. So we set up the radio and ran it 24 hours a day out on an extension cord playing in underneath the stairwell. So we knew that kept them up all night long. And I really felt that so many smells came from having new kits. And that's why they didn't leave right away from Rosie scaring them off, is that they had new baby foxes and weren't ready to move yet. So they were going to have to wait for them to grow up. So we put the radio out there, and it took them about a week to move on. And the radio was the most effective thing. I didn't get any verbal complaints from the neighbors, although I'm sure they were wondering what I was doing with talk radio on at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they probably had to close up their windows to sleep instead of leaving them open. Anyway, we got rid of our foxes, and in no time, Rosie was back sniffing the cracks in the deck again. And of course, now what we had was who would follow after the foxes. And I sort of figured out the way nature probably works. you'd probably get a really nice nest of rabbits, and that would attract the foxes, and the foxes would come in and end up living there after having had, maybe one whole season's feast, and finally moving in, seeing how well that place was to live. And the rabbits that we used to have had been replaced by foxes, and so now what was Rosie sniffing at was a skunk who would move in after the foxes. I don't know if rabbits would be attracted to it, the fox smell's still around there and so forth, but Mr. Skunk moved in. I guess we're lucky there was only one skunk, but it sort of taught about nature, about how things flow, and when things change, what's going to come along next. So, of course, I was thinking, if I'd have known the skunk was next, I might have just left the foxes to themselves. Although they were a problem at night, skunk was a problem 24 hours a day, because you could smell his presence. Not as bad as when you get squirted, but just the leftovers that he carried around into his den. And luckily, the same program got rid of the foxes. The same program that got rid of the foxes worked on Mr. Skunk. So we did another 10-day program, and the skunk didn't come back. I'm not sure where he went, because the foxes weren't moved on from their next place, but he found a place to go. And so I thought it was a valuable story that I should tell. It was one that I lived and learned from, including how to learn, where to go, what to find, try something new, and it'll work for you too. Thanks for listening. See you next time.